So welcome back to this is blog number 6, and this should be for July 30th of 2022. This is chapter 3 of the book Jimmy Hoffa is Missing the Gap, and I'm the author and your moderator for the channel, JHIMTG, which are the initials of the title of the book. So what I'd like for you to do first of all is subscribe, follow, like, share to as many people as you can. Because as I said before, you're not going to get this story from anybody else, and this is the only place you're going to hear it. The book came out 2 years ago, and even the experts have been told about this, the Hoffa family, and they thanked me for it with a personal letter they wrote. They expected a deathbed confession and never got it, unfortunately, they said. It may go somewhere, but for now it's been shelved, and with the recent news about the FBI coming up empty in New Jersey under the Pulaski Skyway Moscato's dump, it may get a little more traction, but I'm not going to count on it. The only place you're going to hear the story is from me. I'll mention these two links that you see right here. That's a free book. It's the 2020 edition. I do have a 2022 edition coming out on July 30th. But that's more for people that really want a personalized signed copy of the paperback. Chapter 3, page 45, and it's called July 30th, 1975, The Maucus Red Fox, Hoffa and O'Brien Timelines. There's a lot of experts out there that have timelines, and they're very well orchestrated. I took the timelines that I had researched and found out about, and then I ran across the Hoffa memo, and then I overlapped my parents' timeline and the ones that made sense from what they told me that they saw, which was just 15 minutes from 2:45 to 3 o'clock. But the gap has to do with the alibis, the stories and the claims that were primarily made by O'Brien and others to try to justify where they were that day. There was a 90-minute time window. The FBI called, they didn't call it the gap, but it was unaccounted for, from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. So anyway, these timelines, though, are very telling. Even though they seem like they're all over the place, I'm going to help you sort it out. Jimmy Hoffa's was very simple, so that's not going to take much. It's well documented. When we get to O'Brien's, you'll see it's all over the place. When Joseph Zarelli, who was the Detroit mob boss, nothing happened without his prior approval. And he has a meeting in February of 1975. It's a known meeting between he and Tony Giacalone and Vito Giacalone, Billy Giacalone, and Peter Vitale and Jimmy Quasarano, again, co-owners of Central Sanitation. So supposedly this is where Zarelli gave his okay for the hit. If I give any addresses here, it's not so you can hound people if it's a home address. These addresses, the same people or occupants are not there. So this is just if you want to plot it out on a map. They're given in the book, of course. So James Hoffa is at his cottage on Ray Court in Lake Orion. And according to Josephine, it was kind of a relaxed morning. He was encouraged about this meeting, that it was going to make way for him to run for the office of President of Teamsters again, but he needed Tony Provenzano's approval, and this was the major step for him. But she said that he had breakfast with her, he did the crossword puzzle, and then he even later went and took a nap on the picnic table. Somebody had said they spoke to him and he seemed really nervous and upset, but that doesn't match what Josephine said. So it's 1 o'clock. He's dressed in a blue sport shirt and blue slacks. And for those that know the Red Fox, you had to have a coat and tie to be seated. So he, I think, was aware the meeting wasn't taking place at the Red Fox, but he was. It was a rendezvous place. He was going to go from there to the actual meeting. So he gets in his 1974 Pontiac Granville. It's green with a green vinyl top. And he heads over, but he decides to stop and see Louis Linto at his business. It's a limousine service at 200 North Paddock and that's if you're mapping it. It's not there any longer. And that's it's called Airport Service Line. And coincidentally, he's not there. He's gone with Cynthia Green on errands. Don't know that he was expecting Hoffa, but I think Hoffa really did want him to join him at this meeting. So he was maybe hoping to go and coax him. But he does talk to the employees there, and one of them, Elmer Reeves, who's a head limo driver and used to be a driver for Hoffa earlier years. So he leaves a message for Linto that he's gone to the meeting. He arrives at the Red Fox at 2 o'clock sharp for the meeting. And if you're mapping as 6676 Telegraph Road, it's at the corner of Maple, which is also called 15 Mile, and that's in Bloomfield Township. Now Bloomfield Township later just became Bloomfield. Same holds true for the Tubmans. It's no longer called Bloomfield Township, but it was incorporated into the city of Birmingham, and that's about 15.5 miles of Woodward. He waits outside the restaurant briefly, then he goes inside, and the manager testified he didn't see the Hoffa there, but the waitress and hostess said yes, he came in and spoke to them briefly, apparently looking for his meeting partners. He goes back outside and he goes over to Damon Hardware. There's a phone on a column outside there. It's a public phone. But he is recorded as making 2 phone calls, and people see him making calls. And it was at 2:15 he calls his wife Josephine, and she backed that story up. He called her and he was upset that people hadn't showed up, cussing and saying Tony Giacalone and Provenzano weren't anywhere around. So he said, I'm going to come home and cook those steaks. There's no shows. So as soon as he hangs up from Josephine, he calls Louis Linto at ASL, and he answers, and it's at 2:35. That's been documented with the Michigan Bell telephone records, so that's not disputable. So from 2:30 till about 2:45, 2:50, they say that Hoffa was seen again. He shook the hands of a couple of men, and he did mention his wife having cataract surgery, which the FBI said could only have come from Hoffa himself because it wasn't public information. And the last witness to see him was a delivery truck driver who pulls in the side driveway. This would be the eastern most driveway exiting the Red Fox parking lot onto Telegraph Road. The truck driver said he had to stop and slam on his brakes because this car was swerving out and almost hit him. That was the Maroon Mercury. And as the car passes by, he identifies Jimmy Hoffa in the back seat behind the driver. And in between he and another man in the back seat, 2 men in front, and Hoffa and another man seated in back, he sees the muzzle of a shotgun out from underneath a gray blanket. So that was documented later when they impounded the car on August 9th, over a week later. There was a shotgun in a case with shotgun shells and different rounds, 9mm, 22mm in the trunk, and also the glove compartment of the Mercury. And there was also a 7-Up can and pieces of paper with Jackie O'Brien's fingerprints on it. So it's 2 o'clock to 2:45 is when witnesses all saw Jimmy Hoffa at the Red Fox. 6 witnesses. 5 of them specifically named him as being definitely Jimmy Hoffa. One sees him get into the Mercury with 3 other men. Another witness claims to have seen the Mercury pull up and said it was Chucky O'Brien driving. Someone else saw a Sal Brigiglio in the parking lot because they didn't know at the time until they saw photos later, but they were in the parking lot. A guy came up to him and said, what do you want? And he said, "Oh, nothing." He went back to his car, but that was before the mercury showed up. So this is a gap alert, and I refer to that at the end of the timelines to just demonstrate what sections need further examination. Lintow, he gave an alternate time to Hoffa's call. He had eventually testified in September at the Detroit grand jury that the call came in at 3:30. That throws the whole timeline off by an hour. But again, I said it's documented that the Michigan Bell telephone record shows the call came in at 2:35. And I might also mention that that became the premise of a book by Chucky O'Brien's stepson, Jack Goldsmith, 2019, the book he wrote In Hoffa's Shadow. And that came out right on the same time as the release of The Irishman. And Jack Goldsmith said he was upset because they portrayed Chucky O'Brien as driving the Mercury in the movie. And the whole premise of his book is that Hoffa could not have been in the car because of Lintow's testimony at 3:30. So Chucky O'Brien would have been well on his way near Local 299, where supposedly a witness saw him at 4:30. Later that night, though, Hoffa's wife Josephine is upset that he didn't get home, and she begins to make some calls. She calls Joseph Baines Sr., who was a friend and another Teamster official, and then she calls her son James Hoffa Jr. He was on vacation in Traverse City, Michigan. He makes a call to her daughter Barbara Ann Crancer and lets her know what's going on. She was a judge at the time in St. Louis, and she was also with the Attorney General's office before that. So, and then she calls Louis Lintow at ASL, and he answers the phone. So Louis Lintow claims that he called the Red Fox and had Hoffa paged twice, and there was no response. But then he makes a call to Joseph Bain, who he happened to have been with earlier in the evening. They were together. He calls Tony Giacalone, who was at Joey Giacalone's apartment in St. Clair Shores at the time. And then he calls Cynthia Green, his business associate at ASL, and he arranges for her to meet him at the Hoffa cottage to console Josephine. Then they both stay the night, and I do mention in the book that he stayed for a week, but I'm going to double check that. I may have to post a correction on that. In testimony, though, Josephine said Lintow, when she was with him, didn't make a single call searching for Hoffa, which seemed odd if he was really trying to help. The following morning, though, they get up early, and Lintow goes to the Red Fox and discovers Jimmy Hoffa's cars in the parking lot. He didn't go inside, open doors or anything like that, but he recognized the car. And then later he and Josephine went to the Bloomfield Township Police Department and reported that. When they got it, they went and retrieved the car. The car was unlocked. There was no sign of a disturbance, and there was a licensed handgun, and there was also, I believe, different things, but there was really no indication of a struggle. They had 26 latent finger and palm prints that they lifted from the car, but nothing ever came from that. At the end of the timeline, I post a little newspaper clipping. Is from the Corpus Christi Times on November 10th of 1975, same year. And it has a little picture of James Hoffa, and it's entitled "Hoffa Spurned Need for Guard." Apparently he had 2 interviews the year of the disappearance. One with Playboy magazine, and the other one was with Jerry Stanecki, who was a newsman in Detroit. So they quoted him as saying, regarding a bodyguard, "The only guy who needs a bodyguard's a liar, a cheat, a guy who betrays his friendship." And then he said, "I don't need any of them." He also went on and said that his friend Tony Giacalone was being hounded by the government on tax matters, and it wasn't fair, so he did let his opinion known as far as what he thought of Tony Giacalone. But from other sources, Anthony Salerno had testified that at that time Hoffa had contracted with him to kill 2 people, and he was given money and everything to make it happen, which of course it didn't. And those 2 people were Frank Fitzsimmons and Tony Giacalone. So he said regarding bodyguards, again, he doesn't need them. They're in your way. If you have a bodyguard, then you get careless. And he said, look at all the gangsters that got killed with bodyguards. He was asked if he'd ever killed anybody. He says, no, killing isn't the way to solve a problem. Well, I'm going to end it now because this is already about to the limit that I want to make these blogs, and Chucky O'Brien's is pretty complex. That's going to be a little lengthy, so we'll save that for the next episode. This is still July 30th if I posted this right, and I'll go ahead and put that up either later today or by tomorrow as far as Chucky O'Brien's timeline. Thank you for joining me. Please subscribe, like, and share this as many people as you can. I need your help to get it out, and I appreciate it. Thank you.